This is looking at AQA English Language Paper 2, Question 2. So before we actually start looking at the framework for the question, the structure of the question, there are a couple of key ideas, key concepts that you need to just get your head around to be able to approach this question. It's going to ask you for a summary. And that wording will always be in the question. And by this, it means that it's going to give you two sources, so two short extracts that you haven't seen before. And it wants you to kind of give a brief overview of what's going on in them. Now, when you're giving that summary, when you're summing up, when you're kind of bringing together those ideas, you can use quotations and you can use paraphrasing. If you paraphrase something, you kind of make a precise, direct reference to it in your own words. So it's giving the same idea, but in your own words. It's going to ask you to either summarise the differences between two things, the similarities between two things, or what you understand about them. And that means both similarities and differences. So summarising, you're going to understand what's going on there and kind of be able to give it back in your answer. Now, one thing with this question is it doesn't just ask for a summary. Even though it says in the question it asks for a summary, it also wants you to draw inferences from that summary. And if you infer something, it means you work it out. You're not told it directly, but you do a bit of detective work and you make an inference. Okay, so say the teacher is standing in front of the class with her arms folded, looking generally sort of annoyed with the noisy class. She's not saying she wants everyone to be quiet, but from that her body language you can infer, you can work out that she's not happy, she'd like people to shut up. In this question, you're going to take the details of each extract and you're going to read between the lines, you're going to work out what you can say about it, what you can kind of read into it. Connected to that are these two terms, explicit and implicit. Now, you might have heard explicit in the context of explicit lyrics or explicit graphics or so, and it's meant in the same way. It's meant that actually you're told something directly, it leaves nothing to the imagination. So if something is explicit, it's clear, it's said, it's spoken or written maybe. You are definitely told. It leaves nothing to the imagination. You don't have to go and work anything out. The opposite of explicit is implicit. And if something is implicit, that's the working out one. You're not actually told. You have to go and kind of read between the lines. You have to go and sort out what the actual real meaning is. Now, these two words give us two useful phrases for this paper. First of all, you can say, for inference, from this we can infer. Okay, and as the reader, you are doing the inferring. Okay, so it's always from this we can infer. From implicit, you can say this implies. Okay. Just make sure you get those the right way round, because one's kind of coming from the reader outwards, one's being suggested by the text. So this one is from the reader, this one is from the text. So generally, question 2 is called summary and inference. And just a reminder that actually you're only going to be asked about summary in the question. Okay. Bit of a tip for when you're doing this, put and inference at the top of your question paper to remind you to go through that process. So even though it's called summary and inference, the focus is on your ability to understand layers of meaning. The more perceptive, the more insight you can show about what's really going on, what's really being conveyed, what you can work out from those texts, the higher your marks will be. If you're perceptive once, you'll get to the bottom of the perceptive band. If you can be consistently perceptive, you'll get to the top of that band. An important thing about this question is this point. Okay, this is about what's going on in the texts, not what the writer is doing. There are no marks for writers' methods. So here you are not talking about similes, verbs, metaphors, etc. Okay, now that might be contrary to everything you've kind of encountered in these papers so far, and in fact all of that kind of technique will come back again in question 4 and question 3 on this paper. But for question 2, summary and inference, it's after working out the information rather than the methods. So if you find yourself saying about this simile shows, etc., you're going down the wrong route. You'll get a clue that the overall texts are linked by something. So it might say both of these extracts deal with education, write a summary of their different approaches to education, or these provide information about sports and entertainment. For example, summarise the differences in their approach. You'll be directed in terms of what the overarching theme of the text is. So to start off with, if we look at a few pictures, now obviously you're not going to get pictures in your exam, but pictures are a kind of handy way in to the kind of skill set you need. So initially we can start with 2 sets of pictures. Both of these pictures depict a Christmas meal. Summarise the differences. Okay, take a moment just to see if you can think about what the differences are between those 2 pictures. Okay, so if you've had a bit of a think of that, you might be looking for explicit information at this point. What can you actually really clearly see? Well, this person's on his own, whereas here there's a family, there's lots of people. This person's facial expression is kind of borderline unhappy, whereas here we've got kind of lots of smiles and they seem to be kind of happy and excited. This table is kind of empty, whereas this table is full of Christmas food. They're the explicit differences. Now, what could you work out from that? What could you kind of read into the idea of different Christmas meals? Well, this is obviously Christmas as a social occasion, to maybe reinforce relationships and maybe meet people you haven't seen in a while. So visit people, actually go out of your way to be sociable. The idea from this, we can work out that this is a happy time, celebration, time to be positive, and time to enjoy each other's company. Full of Christmas food, it might be here you can work out that this is a time to spare no expense. Really kind of push the boat out, really go all out to have a nice time, to kind of make sure that there's food and drink. It's also quite light here, so it could be bright, festive, happy again. This picture B, is pretty much the opposite of that. So this gentleman is alone, so it could be that some people don't want or don't have family or relatives. It's empty. It might be that some people can't afford Christmas, can't really kind of make a big deal out of it. Might be unhappy. This we can imply that not everyone enjoys Christmas, whether they want to or not. We don't know if this gentleman's on his own because he wants to be in some sort of Scrooge-like capacity, or whether he's on his own because he doesn't have any family and really he'd prefer to be with other people. From this then, what can you work out about Christmas meals and the differences? Well, you've started to actually go through the process of identifying what the differences are. Okay, so here, if I do this in a different colour, let's do this in green, you've got family versus alone. From the presence of family, we can infer that Christmas can be a time, or a Christmas meal can be a time to reinforce relationships, whereas from source B, from picture B, we can infer that actually some people prefer to spend it on their own or don't have any family to spend it with. If you wanted to kind of bring that together, it says from this we can work out, or this suggests that people's Christmases might be quite different. For some, a Christmas meal might be a time of great joy and happiness, whereas others it compounds their loneliness. And you can do that throughout. You can say, from source A you can see the full table of Christmas food. From this we can work out that some people spare no expense, whereas the empty table, from this we can work out some people maybe can't afford Christmas or don't celebrate it in an extravagant way. In terms of the differences, overall this suggests that the ways of eating Christmas meals depend on your social status and your level of interaction with your family and friends, maybe. You can see how you're starting to build up this picture of what you can actually see explicitly in the picture, and then what you can work out from that one source, what you can work out from A, what you can work out from B, and then putting them together. Have a go at doing the same with this picture. So you're looking, what kind of areas can you talk about in terms of the cinema experience and how different they might be. Have a go at doing that by yourself for a moment. Okay, so what kind of differences might you pick out on these? Well, actually, you might want to go for the sort of obvious one in terms of the setting, the venue. One is outside, one is inside. You might want to go for the kind of apparent atmosphere there. So one is crowded, this is nearly empty. You might want to go for the kind of organisation going off the back of the atmosphere thing. This one seems very relaxed and informal. Actually, you can tell the seating, for example, everybody's on picnic blankets or sitting around in a field, whereas this one is much more, there are seats in rows, it's more formal. And you might want to try and work out from that what you can imply. So here the setting, the venue, one is inside versus outside. It's permanent versus temporary. And it might be that, I spell permanent correctly, and it might be that actually from this, you can argue that this one suggests that maybe people aren't as excited. Maybe cinema is declining, especially in more old-fashioned cinemas. Whereas here, given it's outside, it's got a kind of maybe a pop-up sort of temporary thing about it, suggests that people are more excited about it. You might want to kind of talk about from the outside. You can imply that the business here is going to be, or this implies the business here is maybe going to be less reliable. Then this one's always going to be here. So you can link that maybe into that point, crowded and empty. And the formality of it, here it's the seating is all over the place. From this suggests it's more relaxed and informal. I actually did both of those stages then. And here the rows suggests it's more formal. But the fact that one is crowded and one is empty, maybe this overall suggests that generally people prefer an informal, relaxed experience. That maybe, you know, the popularity of old-fashioned cinema experiences is falling off a little bit. Maybe people aren't going so much to those events. So what you'd be aiming to do would be to build up this idea of what can I see in source A, what can I work out from what's going on in source A about that, comparing it to source B, what can I see in source B, what can I work out from source B, and then this overall kind of overarching, from this we can infer that, or overall or in general this suggests that. So if you're after a kind of framework for an answer, the pattern you're going to follow loosely for your answer is to look for something in source A. So in source A, it says. Then bring in your inference. From this we can infer that, or this suggests. Then you're going to compare. In source B, however, or you're going to link it in the same sentence with whereas source B shows. Okay, so you've got some sort of comparison word and then your idea into source B. Then you're going to repeat from this being source B, we can infer that. Come up with your observation about source B. And then in general, this could suggest that. Okay, and you're going to generally try and do that 3 times for a whole answer. So when you start to look at your sources, you're looking for 3 points that you can do that comparison on. So have a look at this short piece of text first of all. This is your 19th century text. Okay, and actually you're going to get one, either source A or source B, will be from 1800 and something. So source A, here is somebody speaking about learning to ride the bicycle. And they say, if I am asked to explain why I learned the bicycle, I should say I did it because my doctor kept telling me live out of doors and take much exercise. But I have always hated walking and horseback riding, which does promise... but I have always hated walking and horseback riding, which does promise vigorous exercise, is expensive. The bicycle meets all the conditions to keep healthy. Therefore, I learned to ride. I did it from pure natural love and adventure, and because a good many people thought I could not do it at my age. As nearly as I can make out, it took me about 3 months, with an average of 15 minutes practice daily, to learn first to pedal, second to turn, third to dismount, and fourth to mount independently this most mysterious animal. In just 3 months, I had made myself master. And when you read that for the first time, you're going to kind of be thinking, right, well, I'm summarising what he's saying. And this is one about exercise. You might be asked about the differences about exercise. You might be asked the differences about how to spend your time. Okay, the different approaches or attitudes to it. We don't know, so we look at the second extract. Okay, so source B is a more modern extract and says, there are some gentle rides, but these are aimed at the wimpiest in teenage parties. You could aim for the water-based rides, in which case you won't die of fright, but you will get very damp or, in the case of tidal wave, soaked to the skin. And we can start to guess that they're talking about theme parks here. But raw thrills are the name of the game. Roller coaster purists will aim for Colossus, where they will gain mighty satisfaction from the sheer number of loops. They'll quickly move on to Nemesis Inferno, which dangles its participants as it whips them through gravity-defying swoops and swirls. Stealth, probably the fastest roller coaster in Europe, is all about ultimate speed, and Saw Alive adds a supremely creepy horror movie to a route crammed with stomach-challenging action. So again, when you're reading that, think about what has actually been said about the way people are spending time in this extract, in this article, and what you might be able to work out from that. Okay, so then you put them together, and in this case, the question here is, these articles look at the ways people choose to spend their time. Write a summary of the differences. Now, looking at that, thinking, okay, well, people choosing to spend their time. Why are they spending their time? How are they spending their time? What's the point? And what am I being told in these articles about why people are spending their time in this way? Well, in source A, let's look at why our gentleman is riding his bicycle. Okay, for a start, he's learning to ride the bicycle. That's how he's spending his time. And he clearly says, he explicitly says, I did it because my doctor kept telling me. So actually, why he's riding is for health. Okay. And he wants to stay healthy. He does it because he wants love of adventure and challenge. Okay, so he views it as an adventure, and he wanted something that would kind of be surprising for his age. So we've got challenge and public view. And how long has it taken him? How much time has he spent? Well, 3 months with an average of 15 minutes practice. He has to practice. Okay, this isn't something he could just do. So the effort needed might be something we can talk about. So now I'm going to look at source B. Okay, I've got those ideas in my head in terms of these might be my kind of separate paragraphs, or the basis of my separate paragraphs. So here we've got, there are some gentle rides. These are aimed at the wimpiest in teenage parties. Okay, well, we've maybe got an age thing there, a public view thing. You could aim for the water-based rides, in which case you won't die of fright, but you will get very damp in case of the tidal waves soak to the skin. Raw thrills are the name of the game. So why are people doing this? Well, they're doing it for the thrill of it. Okay, not their health. And trying to look at other of these, so trying to look at things for challenge, public view and effort. Okay, so people will get satisfaction from the sheer number of loops. They'll quickly move on. It's about ultimate speed and stomach challenging. So actually from this I can start to kind of maybe match up my points. Here the challenge in source A is energy and skill. And in source B, it's about nerve. It's about being brave enough to do it. Okay, that maybe kind of begins to link into the challenge, the public view of it. So then I'm looking at the effort side of things. Well, this roller coaster, you're doing it immediately. You just quickly move on. Okay, you just arrive. There's no skill involved. Okay, it's just all about nerve. So from this, I'm trying to work out then what I'm going to say, and my paragraphs might start to look something like, in source, both sources talk about the reasons why people spend their time on activities. Okay, so I'm going to identify my point. What's going to be the thing in my paragraph? Why people choose to spend their time. In source A, this says that it is done for health because my doctor kept telling me, okay, to do it. From this we can infer there's a kind of outside influence on him. He's not actually doing this. He's being made to do it, maybe being compelled or advised to do it. Whereas in source B, there's the idea that raw thrills are the name of the game, and this suggests that people are attracted to it. This is very much something they want to do. Overall, this suggests that there are different ways of spending your time in terms of your choice. Things that are healthy might be less attractive but more beneficial in the long term, whereas things that are appealing to your sense of fun or experience are more fleeting, kind of less beneficial ways of spending your time. Have a go at doing the other 2 points there. Think about what we said about the level of challenge and public view, the level of effort involved in those, and try and adapt to some paragraphs using that form. Okay, if you want a clean copy, you can use that clean copy on that screen. Okay, so now look at the answers you've got. Have you followed the kind of formula? Have you identified a point for your paragraph, what you're going to say? So here it's a point of difference. Okay, so both sources deal with, what are you going to say? Okay, so that could be the point of difference, could be in a different question, point of similarity or something you understand. So you've identified what your paragraph's going to be about. Then, source A, you need your evidence, you need your inference, you need your link to compare, then you need source B, your evidence, your inference, and then in general this could suggest.